There are a ton of options when it comes to choosing ink for the job. Let's cover the most popular ink choices: Plastisol and water-based inks. Remember, for more information on any subject regarding inks, check out the links in the course description. There's a ton of education so you can dive as deep as you want. First, let's start with Plastisol Ink. Plastisol Ink is a favorite for many printers, especially novice printers learning the tricks of the trade. It's more forgiving than water-based ink, and it's much easier to achieve a proper cure. For starters, Plastisol Ink is more opaque. It's much thicker than water-based, so it covers much easier. You don't have to put in so much work to get a vibrant print. Plastisol Ink does not dry unless cured. This means you can place ink on a screen, print a few shirts, leave for the day, and come back to perfectly fine ink on the screen. Plastisol performs best around 75 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, so if you're in a cold environment, modulating or stirring the ink before use is important. Some shops have trouble regulating temperature. Garage shops, for example, can get really hot in the summer and really cold in the winter. Since Plastisol ink doesn't dry out, you won't have to worry about keeping your shop conditions just right. Curing is easier with Plastisol ink too. Curing is the process of using heat to completely fuse or cure the ink. Plastisol can be easily cured in a number of ways, with a heat gun, a flash dryer, a heat press, or a conveyor dryer. We'll touch on these topics later in the course. Cleanup of Plastisol ink can be a little messy since the ink doesn't dry out. Make sure to keep plenty of towels and rags stocked so you can easily clean the ink off of yourself or anything else during the job. There's a lot more to learn about Plastisol ink, how to print it with an underbase, on different types of garments, and other frequently asked questions. To learn more, head to the class description for helpful links and tips. Now let's talk about water-based ink. Water-based ink is popular because it's a little nicer on the environment. Plastisol ink is essentially liquid plastic, while water-based ink is pigment mixed with ink bases that contain water. Printing with this type of ink isn't as straightforward as with Plastisol. First, let's talk about the printing environment. Since water-based ink is based on water, it will dry on the screen after a short amount of time. Shops in very dry places may struggle to keep water-based ink from drying on the screen. Keep a spray bottle of water handy to mist the ink and keep it wet on the screen. When printing water-based ink, it's important to flood the screen after every print. This will pre-fill the stencil and give a better chance of clearing the screen. Raise the screen off the shirt and lightly pull the ink over the entire image area. Don't use too much force. Think of it like spreading peanut butter on bread. You want to cover the bread, but not tear it. This isn't meant to be a print stroke. Keeping the image area flooded will keep it wet for longer and reduce the chance of ink drying in that area and causing issues. Here's an example of a bad flood print. Notice that the ink didn't cover the entire image and it printed an uneven deposit. If it does dry in the image area, you'll need to clean the screen and put new ink in it. Water-based ink is thinner than Plastisol ink, so it lays down a thinner, softer ink deposit. Many printers favor this softer hand feel to their prints. Getting a proper cure with water-based ink takes a bit more finesse. When curing a water-based print, the ink layer needs to breathe in order to evaporate the moisture before the ink can cure. To ensure water-based ink cures properly, printers can add warp drive to the ink. Warp drive is an ink additive that lowers the cure temp of the ink. Add 1.5% warp drive per weight to the ink to achieve full cure over 48 hours. Cleaning up after a water-based print run is a little different than with Plastisol ink. If ink has dried on the screen, it can be a little tricky. We'll talk about cleanup specifically later on in the course. The ink you choose to use depends on your shop conditions and what you're looking for in the final print. Let's start with Plastisol ink. Plastisol ink is more opaque, doesn't dry on the screen, and overall is a smaller learning curve for novice printers. However, it requires more chemicals to clean up and has a more blocky hand feel. Water-based ink, on the other hand, is softer and more eco-friendly. You'll need fewer chemicals to clean it up, but it has a larger learning curve. The prints won't be as vibrant and water-based ink dries quickly on the screen. To learn more about printing with water-based and Plastisol inks, check out the extra links in the course description. Adding ink to a screen depends on the size of the job and the design you're printing. Start by adding smaller amounts of ink to the screen. If it doesn't seem right, add some ink or take some away. You can always do a test print to make sure there's enough ink. Open the ink bucket, stir it until creamy, and scoop out a few ounces. Gently spread the ink at the top of the screen closest to the press. Avoid putting ink on the image area. If the ink is pushed through the image, it can cause blurring or smearing. Whether you choose Plastisol or water-based for your prints, make sure you have all the proper supplies to make the job a success. We're going to print one design with water-based ink and one with Plastisol to illustrate the differences. Before we do that though, let's choose some shirts for the job. Welcome to How to Screen Print with a Kit, the 150 edition. In this free course, I'll be walking you through every step of the process, from darkroom setup to reclaim. I'll be using the Riley Hopkins 150 kit. It has everything you need to start a screen printing hobby or side hustle. Jump in today and get screen printing tomorrow.